There was one metric that shaped my view of what good service looked like in the early stage of my IT career. No prizes for guessing what that was based on the title of this video. For a bit of context, I'd landed in an IT role not from a technical background, but one from customer service, where my colleagues in IT focused on ones and zeros, server clusters, subnet masking, DNS. I was looking the other way, out to our service consumers to understand where the service was working for them, or crucially, where it wasn't. Now, it was my role to be that voice of the customer, if you like, on the inside of IT. So naturally, I spent a lot of time out with the business to understand their needs, their likes, and their dislikes. And one of the major gripes I heard all of the time was it really pisses us off when we call the service desk and either the issue can't be fixed there and then, or we're kept on the phone for an unreasonable amount of time whilst the agent attempts a fix or figures out what to do. Now, this business, given the sector they worked in, time was everything. Clients were charged in 6-minute blocks. So if someone sat on the phone for 10 minutes with the service desk, that's nearly 2 blocks of time that ultimately can't be charged to the customer. Or more realistically, that's 2 blocks of time that the fee earner is going to have to find at some point in their day, in their week, so not to impact their work, their fees, ultimately their recognition. So when we say customers got pissed off the longer they were on the phone, this wasn't a lack of patience or unmanaged expectations or misplaced frustration. There was a tangible, measurable correlation between average call time, impact of fee earners, and customer temperature. So, fixed at first contact, we pushed hard. Our desks were targeted at 75% first contact fix, 85% fixed at first line, acknowledging, of course, there are some things that you're never going to be able to fix at first contact. Although, quick quick sidetrack for a moment, I do remember taking an escalation call from one fairly senior member of staff one day who wasn't very happy that the service desk agent they spoke to couldn't fix their connectivity issue. Now I've been on the phone with them for about 15 minutes, and the line was terrible. Like when you get that really robotic, broken voice. Plus, I could occasionally hear sort of like pings or alerts going off in the background, and there's like a occasional loud voice and announcements. And I said to the customer, "I'm sorry, the line's really bad. Where are you?" The response back was, "Well, I'm trying to enjoy my cruise in the Caribbean, but as I told your service desk agent, my 3G won't connect and I can't receive any emails. But thankfully, the captain has let me use the ship's satellite phone." I mean, seriously. Anyway, back to that mega aggressive first contact fix rate. Now, don't get me wrong, having that target in place did drive a lot of good stuff. We were shit hot on knowledge, making sure that resolution ticket information was resurfaced to agents so they could quickly triage, then find the answer they needed. In terms of agent training and familiarization, we had a really robust mechanism in place to ensure skill gaps were identified and remediated proactively. And a lot of what we put in place was to address that common recurring ask. When it breaks, fix it and fix it quickly. We don't need anything else. Everything else is great. Just do that. So we did, or at least attempted to, the majority of the time. Now, okay, I'd be the first nowadays to jump on the problem management bandwagon. What if we stop the things breaking in the first place, meaning no call to fix at first contact in the first place? And this is where the fallacy of the first contact fix rate really starts to show itself. Now, I can remember somewhat tentatively, a little bit hesitant, remembering all this IT stuff was relatively new to me, suggesting why don't we do something about the insane amount of password reset calls we get? Couldn't we invest in some sort of self-service password reset capability? And the answer that I got back was, well, yes, we could, but if password resets make up 50% of the total number of calls we receive and we get rid of those, how are we going to then meet that almost contractual 75% first contact fix? And so that was the response I got from a much more experienced senior manager within the department. So yeah, I thought, oh yeah, good point. Except, no, it's not a good point. So with nearly 20 years more experience under my belt and a little bit more confidence, let's take another look at the virtues of first contact fix. First off, should we measure it? Absolutely. Should we build our entire service around it? Absolutely not. So what's the benefit of a high first contact fix rate? Simply put, there's a significant volume of incidents reported by the business where there are defined, proven steps in a sequence to follow to remediate or fix that incident. Now, I'm going to step outside the boundaries of incident management just for a moment to recognize that service desks, they don't just deal with incidents, and therefore first contact fix can often be a bit of a contraction. Just as it was in the example I gave, what we're really talking about is first contact fix or fulfillment. There's often the case that simple requests, maybe not requiring approval, can also be first contacted. So when we're looking at all of the contacts to the desk, we shouldn't ignore the massive pile of request workload that lands on a week to week, day to day basis. We should look across all of it. So what's the value in measuring it? Well, I'm going to cover some old ground here. In a video I did a couple of years ago, I think it was called the shift left scale, I talked about the importance of shifting left. Work that resides in your supplier, third line teams, second line teams, being shifted left to the desk. The practice being the more left on that scale the work's done, the quicker, the cheaper, the better the whole episode is handled. Only that scale doesn't stop with the desk. It extends all the way out to prevent problem management, identify what's causing the thing and eliminating it. Now there's no ticket to shift, end off. So if you're a problem manager and you're not looking at what gets fixed at first contact, hence the benefit of measuring it, as the first source of stuff that you can fix, you probably should be. But if removing root cause isn't feasible, that doesn't mean we just live with the fact that the desk needs to do something. Not at all. We can automate stuff. If a human can fix something by following known steps, by definition, that's automatable. Whatever steps we follow, we tell the machine to do, and Bob's your uncle. From an impact to IT perspective, they're as good as eliminated. And lastly, if those two things aren't possible, can we give the customer the ability to self-serve? By way of providing them with knowledge, access, capability, a mix of all three that removes the need for them to call us. Password resets, of course, being a fantastic example. So again, there's absolute value in measuring what's been fixed or fulfilled at first contact because it leads us down that path of continual improvement. But if we're wedded to a metric and that drives a whole set of behaviours just to meet that metric, well, then that's missing the point of why we measure stuff in the first place. It becomes almost sort of anti-improvement. And like I did all those years ago, you might face some resistance when challenging the value of that metric. Senior stakeholders might say, well, things like our first contact fix rate is 70%. That's good performance. Ultimately, I think a high first contact rate in 2026 is evidence that you've just not automated enough or you've not prevented enough stuff. Not that your desk is brilliant. Or you might hear things like, well, but our users want to talk to a person. Yeah, some do. For complex, stressful, ambiguous situations, they don't for password resets. And my final dig at sort of the first contact fix rates, there's this other fallacy that when a human steps into a workplace, they leave all of their outside of work, day-to-day user preferences at the front door. Now, if that were true, I want to talk to a person, internet banking wouldn't be a thing. Google, Facebook, X, every platform would have enormous service desks handling millions of calls a day from users who forgot their password. Just because our users are in the workplace, they still expect technology solutions that work for them, not the other way around. So what's the answer? Well, first contact fix has its place, but focus on it alone or over and above everything else, and you misplace the value that service desks should offer in 2026. Outside of a work environment, I don't expect to have to call Amazon every day, every week, every interaction to report the same issue. If I did, I'd be voting with my feet or fingers probably on the keyboard and find a more reliable service. A CIO of mine once said, we have to deliver services to users as if they had a choice to go elsewhere. And I couldn't agree with that statement more. And when I'm using a service like Amazon, my expectation is that if there's an issue or I need a level of support, the platform either takes care of it or I can do it myself. The very last thing I want to do is to call someone. However, when there's no other option but to talk to someone, that's where the real value of a desk kicks in. A true expert, not just someone who can follow a script and use a ticketing tool, but someone who can diagnose unfamiliar problems, manage difficult interactions, and identify when a one-off is actually a pattern. Someone who can own the entire customer interaction and relationship throughout that transaction, whether that transaction is going to take 5 minutes or 5 days. Simply put, if you're focusing on first contact as your primary metric, then the service you operate today is likely to be the same service you operate in 2, 3, 4, 5 years. Except by then, your users' needs will have moved on without you to a point where you might struggle to address without serious and costly intervention. I hope that's been of use. I've been Gareth at Switch It Off and On again. See you next time.